Dr. Alan Carter stared at the screen, his coffee growing cold beside the keyboard. For several minutes he had been frozen in place, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The quantum resonance detector had picked up something impossible. Take Gyo. Lab was quiet at 3:47 a.m. Most of the staff at the quantum resonance laboratory had gone home hours ago. Only Alan and his research assistant, Frank Porter, remained, monitoring an experiment that was supposed to be routine. "Frank," Alan said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come look at this." Frank walked over from his workstation, rubbing his tired eyes. "What am I looking at?" "I don't know." Alan pointed to a pattern on the screen. "But the detector is picking up a signal that doesn't match any known quantum pattern." Frank leaned closer, his fatigue instantly forgotten. "That's not possible." It gets stranger. Alan tapped a few keys and a simple message appeared on the screen. "You broke it." Frank laughed nervously. "Is this some kind of joke? Did Steve from IT decide to mess with us?" "I already checked, this isn't a prank." The message came through the quantum entanglement array. Alan ran his hand through his graying hair. "It's being transmitted on a subatomic level." "But from where?" Frank asked, pulling up a chair. "That's the thing, according to these readings." Alan paused, knowing how crazy his next words would sound. "It's not coming from anywhere within our universe. Within hours, the lab was filled with scientists and government officials. Dr. Susan Mitchell, the head of the Quantum Resonance Laboratory, had arrived immediately after Alan's call. By noon, the facility was under military lockdown. "Walk me through it again," Susan said, her usually calm voice tight with tension. Alan pointed to the large display where he had transferred the data. The signal appeared at exactly 3:42 a.m. It came through our quantum entanglement array, but it doesn't match any known pattern of quantum communication. "And the message?" asked a stern-looking woman in an Air Force uniform who had introduced herself as General Patricia Harris. "Just 3 words. You broke it." Alan pointed to the simple text on the screen. "What exactly did we break?" General Harris asked. "We don't know," Susan replied. "But based on how the message was transmitted, we're dealing with technology far beyond our current understanding." Over the next few days, similar reports came in from quantum research facilities around the world. The same message had appeared on every quantum entanglement system on the planet at the exact same moment. 1 week after the initial contact, the president addressed the nation from the Oval Office. He announced the formation of a special research team codenamed Threshold that would work to understand the message and its source. Alan, Susan, and Frank were transferred to a new facility deep in the Nevada desert. The complex was built underground, surrounded by military personnel and the most advanced scientific equipment money could buy. "We've been trying to send a response for 3 days," Dr. Paul Wilson said, frustration clear in his voice. As the nation's leading expert in quantum communication, he had been brought in to help establish contact. "But we have no idea if our messages are being received." "Maybe we're thinking about this all wrong," said Linda Garcia, a young physicist who had joined the team yesterday. "We're trying to communicate through the same channels we use for our own quantum experiments. But what if that's exactly what caused the problem in the first place?" The room fell silent as everyone considered her words. "You think our experiments damaged something?" Alan asked. Linda nodded. "The message was, you broke it. What if our quantum experiments are somehow damaging something fundamental to the structure of reality?" "That's a big leap," Susan said. "Is it?" Linda pulled up data on her tablet. "Look at this. I've been analyzing when the message appears. It's not constant. It gets stronger every time we run certain types of quantum experiments." Alan reviewed the data, feeling a chill run down his spine. "She's right. The signal strength increases whenever we manipulate quantum states in specific ways." The implications were staggering. For years, scientists around the world had been pushing the boundaries of quantum physics, creating entanglements, superpositions, and other quantum states that defied classical physics. What if these experiments were doing some kind of damage on a level humans couldn't perceive? 2 months after the first message, A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Ben Howard, an astronomer who had been monitoring deep space for any unusual signals, detected a pattern in the cosmic microwave background radiation, the leftover energy from the Big Bang. "It's the same pattern as the quantum message," he explained to the team at Threshold. "But it's coming from, well, from everywhere, as if the entire universe is resonating with this signal." General Harris frowned. "Are you saying the universe itself is trying to communicate with us?" "No," Alan said slowly, the pieces finally coming together in his mind. "Not our universe, something beyond it." The idea was almost impossible to comprehend. Human science had long theorized about the possibility of a multiverse, multiple universes existing parallel to our own. But the idea that something outside our universe could be aware of human activities and could communicate with us was beyond anything they had imagined. A month later, they made another discovery. Dr. Zoe Martinez, a mathematician who had been analyzing the patterns in the signal, found that the message contained more than just those 3 words. "There's a mathematical component to the signal," she explained. "It's like coordinates, but not for a location in space. These appear to be coordinates in, well, the only way I can describe it is coordinates in reality itself." Using these coordinates, the team modified their quantum equipment. 3 days later, they received a new message: "Stop breaking the walls." The message confirmed their worst fears. Somehow, human experiments with quantum physics were damaging the barriers between universes. General Harris immediately ordered all quantum physics research worldwide to cease. It wasn't an easy decision. Quantum computing had become integral to many fields from medicine to encryption, but the risk was too great. "What do we do now?" Frank asked Alan as they sat in the cafeteria, both men exhausted after working for 20 straight hours. Alan sipped his coffee, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "We learn how to fix what we broke." That night, as Alan finally lay down to sleep in his quarters at the Threshold facility, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just taken its first step into a much larger and more dangerous reality than anyone had ever imagined. Outside his window, the stars seemed to shine with new meaning, a reminder that the universe, and whatever lay beyond it, was watching. 6 months passed since the discovery of the first message. The Threshold facility had grown. What started as a small team now included over 200 scientists from around the world. Every major nation had sent their best minds to help solve the problem. Dr. Julie Winters worked late in her lab, just as she had every night for weeks. She was the newest addition to the core team, a quantum physicist who had been studying particle collisions before being recruited to Threshold. Julie stood at her desk, surrounded by screens filled with data from particle accelerators around the world. "There has to be a pattern here," she muttered to herself, pushing her short blonde hair behind her ears. For days, Julie had been comparing the timing of the mysterious messages with global scientific activities. She noticed something that others had missed. The team knew that quantum experiments triggered responses, but Julie discovered something more specific. Alan Carter walked into her lab with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing 1 cup beside her. "Look at this," Julie said, not bothering with a greeting. She pointed to one of her screens. "Every time a high-energy particle collision happens in any accelerator, the frequency of the message increases." Alan leaned closer. "Are you sure?" Julie nodded and pulled up another screen. "I collected data from every major particle accelerator. For the past 6 months, the pattern is clear. When we smash particles together at near light speed, something happens." Alan studied the data. His tired eyes widened as he realized what Julie had found. "We need to call a meeting, now." 3 hours later, the core team gathered in the main conference room. General Harris stood at the front with Alan and Julie. "Dr. Winters has made a breakthrough," General Harris announced. "I'll let her explain." Julie stood up, nervous but determined. "We've been looking for patterns in when the messages appear. What I've found is that every time we conduct high-energy particle collisions, there's a spike in message frequency. She displayed her data on the main screen. We're creating tiny, momentary ruptures each time we smash particles together. Dr. Eric Daniels, a mathematician who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Ruptures in what exactly? Based on the data, Julie said. I believe we're tearing the fabric that separates our universe from whatever is beyond. The room erupted in discussion. Some scientists argued against her theory, while others quickly saw the connections in the data. There's more, Julie continued when the noise died down. It's not just particle accelerators. Certain types of quantum computing are also creating micro-tears. This news hit hard. Quantum computing had become essential to modern society. Banks, hospitals, and governments all relied on quantum computers for their most critical systems. Dr. Susan Mitchell spoke up. If we need to shut down all quantum computers and particle accelerators, the economic impact would be devastating. The alternative might be worse, Alan said quietly. General Harris nodded. I'll take this to the president immediately. In the meantime, I want confirmation. Double-check this data. Run new tests if you have to, but be careful not to cause more damage. Lisa Grayson, the team's communications specialist, had been listening carefully. If we've figured out when the messages come and what triggers them, maybe we can establish better communication. What do you have in mind? Alan asked. We build a specialized quantum computer, Lisa explained. One designed specifically to minimize damage while allowing us to send a clear message back. The team worked day and night for 2 weeks. With help from engineers and computer specialists, they built what Lisa called a gentle quantum communicator. It used the minimum energy needed to create quantum states that could carry a message. When the device was ready, the team gathered around it. General Harris joined them, along with several government officials watching through secure video links. What do we say? Frank asked. How do you talk to something outside the universe? We keep it simple, Lisa said. We need to show that we understand the problem and want to fix it. After much discussion, they agreed on a message. We didn't know. How can we fix it? Lisa carefully operated the device, sending the message using the coordinates Dr. Martinez had discovered months earlier. Then they waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. The team took shifts monitoring all detection equipment. Alan barely slept, spending most of his time in the main lab. On the 3rd day, as Alan was about to take a break, all the monitors lit up at once. A new message appeared. Stop breaking. Start repairing. The message was followed by something unexpected, a complex series of numbers and symbols. What is this? General Harris demanded. Dr. Martinez studied the new information. It's not just a message, it's instructions. Over the next few days, the team worked to decode the instructions. Julie was the first to understand what they were being told to build. It's plans for a device, she explained to the others. Something that can repair the tears we've created. Can we build it? General Harris asked. Alan studied the plans. Some of these materials, some of these processes, they're beyond our current technology. But not impossible, Julie said. We'd need to develop new manufacturing techniques, new ways of manipulating matter at the quantum level. But it could be done. The team named the device the Needle, since its purpose seemed to be stitching closed the tears humanity had created. Building it would require a global effort unlike anything humanity had attempted before. Word went out to research facilities and manufacturing plants worldwide. The message from beyond the universe was clear. Humanity had broken something fundamental to reality itself, and now they needed to fix it. As the plans for the Needle were distributed to scientists around the world, more information arrived from beyond. The entities sending the messages began to reveal themselves. They called themselves the architects, and explained through mathematical formulas that our universe was one of many, a delicate construction they had designed. We're not just breaking our universe, Alan explained during a briefing with world leaders. We're potentially damaging the entire multiverse structure. The most unsettling part came when Dr. Martinez decoded another pattern in the communications. She studied it for days before bringing her findings to the team. They're not just concerned, she told the others, her voice quiet. Based on the emotional patterns in these mathematical communications, they're terrified. Whatever lies beyond, these tiers we're creating, the architects are afraid of it. As humanity began the enormous task of building the needle, a new sense of purpose united the world. They were no longer just exploring the universe. They were responsible for protecting it. The plans for the needle were unlike anything humanity had seen before. Engineers worldwide struggled to understand the complex designs the architects had sent. The device required materials that could withstand forces beyond what current science could measure. Owen Richards led the engineering team tasked with building the needle. A practical man with 30 years of experience in advanced materials, Owen faced the greatest challenge of his career. These specifications are impossible, he told Alan during their weekly meeting. They stood in a massive hangar that had been converted into the main construction site. Some of these materials don't even exist on Earth. Alan nodded, understanding Owen's frustration. That's why we've brought in scientists from every field. We need to invent these materials. In 6 months? Owen shook his head. That's not enough time. The architects were clear. The tiers are growing larger. We don't have a choice. That night, Alan couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet facility, thinking about everything that had happened. In less than a year, humanity had discovered they weren't alone in the multiverse, that their scientific progress had damaged the fabric of reality, and that something dangerous might be waiting on the other side of the tiers they had created. When he reached the communication lab, Alan was surprised to find Julie already there, working on the gentle quantum communicator. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Julie looked up, dark circles under her eyes. I've been getting more data from the architects. They're sending information faster now. Anything useful? Julie pulled up a new set of equations on her screen. I think they're trying to tell us more about themselves and what they built. Alan sat down beside her, and together they worked through the complex mathematics. By morning, they had decoded part of the message. The multiverse is like a building with many rooms, Alan explained to the team later that day. Our universe is just one room. The walls between rooms are what we've been damaging with our experiments. And what's outside the building? General, Harris asked. Julie shook her head. The architects won't say directly, but based on their mathematical language, they're describing something chaotic, something that doesn't follow any physics we can understand. That's what they're afraid of, Dr. Martinez added. Whatever is outside could destroy not just our universe, but all of them. As weeks passed, progress on the needle accelerated. Scientists made breakthroughs daily, developing new materials, and manufacturing techniques that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. Nations shared resources and knowledge freely, united by the common threat. Dr. John Miller, a quantum physicist from the original team, discovered a way to create one of the impossible materials the needle required. By manipulating atoms in a strong magnetic field, he formed a lattice structure that could channel energy in ways that defied conventional physics. It's not exactly what the architects specified, he admitted when presenting his discovery to the team, but our tests show it works the same way. Other breakthroughs followed. A team in Japan developed a method to create quantum-linked metal that could transfer energy instantly across any distance. Engineers in Europe built components that could withstand temperatures approaching absolute zero, and others that wouldn't melt even at the heat of the sun's core. 3 months into construction, the needle began to take shape. It resembled a massive tower of twisted metal and pulsing light, surrounded by fields of equipment that monitored every aspect of its function. The facility around it grew as well, with thousands of scientists and engineers now working around the clock. Communication with the architects became more frequent. They sent detailed instructions on how to operate the needle once it was complete. The device would need to send precisely calibrated energy pulses to each location where tiers had formed. There's something the architects aren't telling us, Lisa said during a private meeting with Alan, Julie, and General Harris. I've been analyzing their communication patterns. They're holding something back. General Harris frowned. You think they're lying to us? Not lying, Lisa clarified. But they're definitely not telling us everything. It's like they're afraid of how we'll react to the full truth. Can you blame them? Julie asked. We accidentally damaged the fabric of reality. They probably don't trust us with all their secrets. As the needle neared completion, more information arrived about the architects themselves. They weren't beings as humans understood life. They existed in a state beyond physical form, beyond time as humans experienced it. They had built the multiverse as a structure to contain and organize reality itself. Dr. Maria Lopez, the team's linguist, made an important discovery when studying the mathematical language the architects used. They refer to themselves using a term that translates roughly as the ones who came before the light, she explained. This suggests they existed before our universe, maybe before any universe. Gods? Frank asked. Maria shook her head. Not in any religious sense. Think of them more like engineers who built a machine so complex it developed its own awareness. They didn't create life or consciousness. They just built the structure that allowed it to emerge. 5 months after construction began, the needle was ready for its first test. The team gathered in the control room, watching as technicians prepared the device for activation. We'll start with a low-power pulse, Owen explained. Just enough to see if the energy patterns match what the architects described. Alan nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. Do it. The needle hummed to life, its complex array of quantum-linked components glowing with strange light. Energy readings spiked on the monitors as the device sent its first pulse into what scientists now called the membrane, the boundary between universes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then all the monitors flashed with new data. The architects had sent a response. They say it's working, Julie announced, reading the incoming message. The pulse reached the nearest tear, but she paused, her expression changing as she read further. What is it? General Harris demanded. They're saying the tears are worse than they thought. And Julie looked up, her face pale. Something is pressing against the membrane from the other side. Something is trying to get in. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. After a moment, Alan spoke. Can the needle repair the tears before whatever is out there breaks through? Julie turned back to the monitors, reading the continuing stream of data from the architects. They think so. But we need to operate at full power immediately. No more tests. General Harris looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each team member. You heard Dr. Winters. Prepare for full power activation. Whatever is out there, it's not getting in on our watch. As the team rushed to prepare, Alan stood alone for a moment, looking at the massive needle through the observation window. Humanity had broken something they didn't understand. Now they had to fix it before something worse happened. The fate of not just Earth, but every universe in existence, might depend on what they did next. The decision was made to move the needle to Antarctica. Scientists determined that the remote location would minimize risk to populated areas if something went wrong. Within 2 weeks, the massive device was carefully disassembled, transported, and rebuilt inside a specially constructed facility on the icy continent. The Antarctic base sprawled across the frozen landscape, a collection of low buildings surrounding the central structure that housed the needle. 150 people now lived and worked at the facility, isolated from the rest of the world. Alan stood at the window of the control room, watching the endless white of the Antarctic plain. In 12 hours, they would activate the needle, at full power for the first time. Beautiful, isn't it? Julie said, joining him at the window. Alan nodded. Hard to believe that somewhere out there, beyond what we can see, something is trying to break into our reality. The isolation team reported 3 new tears yesterday, Julie said. They're appearing more frequently now. The isolation team was a group of scientists monitoring quantum activities worldwide. They had developed sensors that could detect new tears as they formed. Are we ready for tomorrow? Alan asked. As ready as we can be. The architect sent final calibration data this morning. Owen's team has been making adjustments all day. That night, few people at the base slept. The activation was scheduled for 6 a.m., timed to match a moment when, according to the architects, the membrane between universes would be at its strongest. 5:30 a.m. The core team gathered in the control room. General Harris had arrived the previous day to oversee the operation. World leaders watched via secure video links as technicians performed final checks on the needle. All systems show green, Owen reported. Energy reserves at full capacity. Dr. Lopez, who had become their primary interpreter of the architects' communications, received a new message. The architects say we need to hurry. They're detecting increased pressure on the membrane. Alan took his position at the main control station with Julie beside him. They would operate the needle together, following the precise instructions provided by the architects. Begin power-up sequence, Alan said. The needle hummed to life, its components glowing with strange light. The room filled with the sound of cooling systems working at maximum capacity to prevent the delicate parts from overheating. Power at 20%, Julie reported. Outside the facility, the sky changed color, shifting from the pale blue of early morning to a deep purple. Scientists monitoring atmospheric conditions reported unusual readings. Power at 50%, Julie continued. First targeting system online. The needle operated by identifying the location of tears in the membrane and sending precisely calibrated energy pulses to repair them. The architects had provided coordinates for all known tears, which numbered in the thousands. 75%, Julie said. All targeting systems online. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. One of the monitoring stations showed energy readings spiking well beyond expected levels. What's happening? General Harris demanded. Owen rushed to check the readings. Something's feeding energy back through the system. The needle is drawing more power than we're putting in. Is that possible? Alan asked. Not according to any physics I understand, Owen replied. On the main screen, a message from the architects appeared. Caution, boundary thinning, entity attempting contact. What does that mean? General Harris asked Dr. Lopez. Before she could answer, the lights in the control room flickered. For a brief moment, every screen went dark. When they came back on, something had changed. In the center of the room, the air seemed to bend and twist as if something was pushing through from somewhere else. Full power now, Alan shouted. We need to close the tiers. Julie pushed the controls forward, bringing the needle to 100% power. The entire facility shook with the energy being channeled through the device. Through the observation window, they could see the needle firing pulses of brilliant light into the sky. Each pulse targeted a tear in the membrane, sending precise amounts of energy to seal the damage. For 3 tense minutes, the needle operated at full capacity. Then something unexpected happened. In the testing chamber adjacent to the needle, security cameras captured a strange sight. The air seemed to fold in on itself, creating a small pocket of space that didn't look quite right. Inside this pocket, shapes moved that didn't follow the normal rules of geometry. What is that? General Harris asked, pointing to the security feed. I think something is partially materializing, Julie said, her voice barely audible over the alarms. Dr. Lopez received another message from the architects. Danger, entity breaching, continue repair. Ryan Foster, a technician monitoring the needle's cooling systems, was in the testing chamber when the anomaly appeared. The security cameras showed him turning toward the strange distortion in the air. For a moment he seemed frozen in place. Then he collapsed. Get a medical team in there now, General Harris ordered. 2 security officers rushed into the testing chamber. They pulled Ryan away from the anomaly, which was now growing larger. As they dragged him into the corridor, the anomaly suddenly collapsed in on itself and vanished. What happened to Foster? Alan asked, when the medical team reported. Back Dr. Karen Phillips, the base's chief medical officer, looked confused. He's alive. His vital signs are stable, but his body is different. Different how? General Harris demanded. At the quantum level, Dr. Phillips explained. The atoms that make up his body are still there, but they're arranged wrong. It's like they're following different physical laws. Despite the incident, the needle continued its work. For 3 days it operated continuously, sending pulses to repair tears in the membrane. Scientists observed strange phenomena worldwide. Aurora-like lights appearing at the equator, temporary gravitational anomalies, and brief localized instances where the laws of physics seemed to operate differently. On the fourth day, as the needle targeted one of the largest tiers, another anomaly appeared in the control room itself. This time everyone saw it clearly, a geometric shape that seemed to exist in more dimensions than humans could perceive. It hovered in the air for several seconds before vanishing. The architects say it's a glimpse of what exists between universes, Dr. Lopez translated. A space where our physics doesn't apply. General Harris looked grim. Can whatever's out there get all the way through? The architects say no, Dr. Lopez replied. Not as long as we repair the tiers, but these glimpses will continue until the work is complete. Alan looked at the readings from the needle. We're making progress. 60% of the known tiers have been repaired. But the needle is showing signs of strain. Indeed, some components of the device were beginning to fail under the enormous energies being channeled through them. Owen and his team worked around the clock, replacing parts as they burned out. Can it hold together long enough? General Harris asked. Alan studied the data before answering. If the architect's calculations are correct, yes, but it's going to be close. As the needle continued its work, humanity held its breath. The fate of the universe, of all universes, hung in the EO balance. And whatever waited on the other side of the membrane was still pressing to get in. Day 7 of the needle's operation began with a crisis. 3 main components failed simultaneously, causing the energy output to drop by 40%. Without those components, they couldn't generate enough power to seal the remaining tiers. Owen gathered his engineering team in the workshop adjacent to the needle chamber. We need to rebuild these components in less than 12 hours, he told them. The architects say the largest tear is growing faster than the others. If we don't seal it soon, it might become too large to repair. The team worked frantically, using materials they had in reserve. Some parts couldn't be replaced exactly as designed, so Owen made modifications based on what they had available. Will these work? Alan asked when Owen presented the rebuilt components. They should, Owen replied, though his expression showed doubt. They won't last as long as the originals, but they might hold together long enough to finish the job. While the engineers worked on the repairs, Julie received new information from the architects. She rushed to find Alan, who was supervising the reinstallation of the components. Alan, the architect sent new coordinates, she said, her face pale. There's another tier forming, larger than any we've seen before, and it's forming right here under the facility. Alan's heart sank. How is that possible? The needle is supposed to be preventing new tiers from forming. The architects think it's because of the needle itself, Julie explained. The energy we're using to seal the tiers is creating a new one right under us. They say it's like trying to patch a hole in a balloon. Press too hard in one spot and another weak spot bulges out. Alan called an emergency meeting. The core team gathered along with General Harris to discuss this new threat. Can we move the needle? General Harris asked. Owen shook his head. Not without shutting it down completely. And if we do that, all our work so far would be undone, Julie finished. The tiers we've sealed would reopen. Dr. Lopez received a new message from the architects. As she read it, her expression changed from concern to shock. The architects say we need to finish the repairs in the next 24 hours, she said. After that, the tear beneath us will become too large to contain. So we either succeed completely or fail completely, General Harris said. Alan nodded. And if we fail, whatever is on the other side gets in, Julie said quietly. With the repaired components installed, the needle resumed full operation. The team worked in shifts, monitoring every aspect of the device's function. The architects sent constant updates, guiding them as they targeted each tear in the membrane. As hours passed, more strange phenomena occurred. Gravity in parts of the facility fluctuated. Objects sometimes seemed to exist in 2 places at once. Several people reported seeing shapes in the corners of their vision that disappeared when looked at directly. 18 hours into the final push, with 80% of the tiers repaired, the largest component failed again. This time, there were no replacements. We need a new approach, Alan said as they gathered to discuss options. The architects say we still have 6 hours before the tear beneath us becomes critical. We need to find a way to channel enough energy to seal the remaining tiers without that component. Julie studied the needle's design. What if we redirect the energy flow? Bypass the failed component entirely. That would put too much strain on the secondary systems, Owen objected. Not if we change the targeting sequence, Julie countered. Instead of trying to seal all the remaining tiers at once, we focus on one at a time, starting with the most critical. The team debated the idea. It was risky. The original plan called for simultaneous repair to prevent any single tear from growing too large while they worked on the others. But with limited time and resources, they had few options. Do it, General Harris ordered. For the next 5 hours, they worked under Julie's guidance, sealing the tiers one by one. The needle strained under the modified energy flow, parts of it glowing white-hot despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity. With 30 minutes remaining before the deadline, they had sealed all but 2 tiers, the one beneath the facility and one on the opposite side of the globe. We can't target both from here, Julie said, frustration clear in her voice. The angle is wrong for the distant tear. Dr. Lopez received another message from the architects. They say we need to focus everything on the tear beneath us. It's become the priority. Alan looked at the data. But if we ignore the other tear, it will remain open, Julie acknowledged. But it's smaller than this one. The architects think they can contain it long enough for us to develop a new solution. With no time to debate, they redirected all of the needle's power to target the tear directly beneath the facility. The entire structure shook as energy poured into the device. Warning alarms blared from every monitoring station as systems overloaded. We're exceeding safety limits by 300%, Owen warned. Keep going, Alan ordered. We're almost there. In the final minutes, as the needle poured energy into the tear, something extraordinary happened. The air in the center of the control room seemed to part like a curtain. Through the opening, they glimpsed something impossible, a space that seemed to contain everything and nothing at once, filled with shapes and colors that human eyes couldn't properly process. And in that space, they saw them, the architects. Not physical beings, but patterns of energy and information that somehow conveyed a sense of ancient intelligence. These patterns shifted and changed, forming complex structures that seemed to be observing the humans as intently as the humans observed them. For a brief moment, everyone in the room felt a presence in their minds, not words, but pure concepts, transmitted directly into their thoughts. Gratitude, approval, and caution. Then the curtain closed, and the readings on the monitors showed that the tear had been sealed. The needle gave one final pulse of energy before shutting down, its components too damaged to function any longer. A profound silence fell over the facility. Did we do it? General Harris asked. Julie checked the readings. The tear beneath us is sealed. The distant one remains, but it's stable for now. A final message came from the architects. Boundary restored. Caution advised. You are not alone. 5 years passed. The world changed after the event. International cooperation continued as humanity worked to build a new needle, one designed specifically to seal the remaining tear. Quantum research resumed, but with strict guidelines to prevent further damage to the membrane. Alan and Julie led a new organization tasked with maintaining communication with the architects and monitoring for any new tiers. They established protocols for safe scientific advancement and shared carefully selected information with the public. The greatest change was philosophical. Humanity now knew they were part of something vastly larger and more complex than they had imagined. They weren't alone in the multiverse, and their actions had consequences beyond their understanding. One evening, as Alan worked late in his office, he discovered something in the original mathematical formulas the architects had sent years ago. Hidden within the complex equations was a message that had been overlooked. When properly decoded, it revealed a warning. Others noticed your tears. Not all architects build. Some destroy. Prepare. Alan sat back in his chair, the implications of this message sinking in. Humanity had faced one crisis and survived. But the universe, or rather the multiverse, was larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And now, something else had noticed them. As he looked out his window at the night sky, Alan realized that the first message from beyond the universe had been just the beginning.